Hola, coolers, and welcome back to Fullback, Barca Football's weekly podcast on everything that's happened this week. Dev, it has been a good week for Barca fans. We don't get many of those, especially when there's transfer window and when it's all talk about money and stadiums and whatnot. But this week, the Champions League being back, it was actually a very, very good week for Barca. And we are here, guys, to discuss all of that and some more. But first of all, Dev, your general thoughts, emotions, feelings, whatever it is, just share it with us just now.
Yeah, welcome back, guys, to this episode of our podcast. Of course, we are doing this on a weekly basis now. Curating all the stories that happened in the week. So yeah, as Dom said, it was good. The Valencia win was good because it kind of told the fan base that okay, we were playing like last season, and then there was obviously excitement about Newcastle, and it was an away game, and Barca hasn't played in England away for a while because our Champions League story hasn't been the best in the last 5 years. So there was obviously a lot of excitement about going to St. James Park and playing the game. And obviously there was this side story about Lamine Yamal not being able to play. And then there was concern about, okay, if he's not playing, then generally we don't do that well. So what would happen?
Oh, yeah.
Generally you're worried that, okay, we will probably win, we'll go draw or what have you. So there were concerns. But obviously Barca played really well for an away game, and we came back with a 2 victory. A lot of story points and talk points to talk about that. There was obviously the incredible reception by the British media and also the fans of Newcastle about the game and the way Barca played. So that was interesting because lately the banter around Barca has been the best if you go online.
Oh, yeah.
And then after that, we want to touch base upon a couple of things that we noticed. Last year, obviously, it was one of the most discussed things was Flick's so-called highline, and there was lots and lots written about it and talked about it, and we have spent more time on this. And this year, you can see that Flick has made an adjustment, and the highline he has, at least in the last 2 games, he has dropped. So we'll talk about what that means and why we are suddenly seeing Flick's Barcelona playing on a compact block. We'll talk about a couple of players based on the performance that they made. And one of them is obviously Ronald Araújo because he had a great game against Newcastle and he hasn't had the best of time. And then if we get time, we'll cover on the salary limit. Barca's salary limit has dropped by another 100 million euros.
Always some money talk with us.
It has dropped again. And we'll try and touch it. We have obviously written a lot about it and talked about it. But yeah, we're going to try and see if we can cover that.
I think the good place to start is the Newcastle win because that's the big news of the week. Of course, Valencia is there. But we kind of expected to beat Valencia. It's not that they're an easy opponent, but they have been an easy opponent or a very welcome one for Barca, for Flick's Barca for the past 2 seasons, including this one for now. And, 6 goals against them, but not really what you would expect every time, but it seems to be the case for Barca. But the Newcastle win, without Lamine Yamal, without Balde, and then with the recovering Frenkie de Jong, now that was something to behold. And then, of course, the media reaction to all of that was very, very interesting, to say the least. So I think what we'll have to talk about is the way the Barca approached this Newcastle game, because it was a very mature performance. Right? We talked about this on the live stream as well after the game, and thank you guys for joining us there. Make sure to tune in when we do these live reviews, because that's when the emotions are raw, and that's when we are actually giving you the freshest and the most genuine reactions. Now, back to this Newcastle analysis, I think the highlight being one of those things is that we had to talk about, but also the team selection. Were you surprised to see Araujo in the lineup? Were you surprised to see even Frenkie de Jong in the lineup? Obviously, returning from injury, we know that he's a starter. But to start him fresh off of an injury in a game like that, it shows you that Flick values him a lot. Now, let's start with Araujo and then tie into the general performance, because the highline, Araujo and Joan Garcia, to that extent, have a lot in common.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think they're all interconnected in the greater scheme of things. I mean, like from my perspective, I wasn't surprised. In fact, I would have liked him to start. My theories were, however, different. My point was that Newcastle had a selection of 6'5" players right in that D, and we didn't really have a very strong physical players to take care of that aerial threat. Now, I'm not saying that Kubarsi or Eric Garcia aren't good, but they're just not there when it comes to aerial prowess. So my thinking was Flick needs to have Araujo out there, but then there were other considerations as well. If you have seen the how the team has progressed this season, right? Joan Garcia right now is doing a lot of short passing at the back, and you could have seen that, and his distribution is also improving. But when it started, it wasn't like that. So he's obviously growing into how to play like the Barca keeper. from that. He's obviously got great reflexes. And if you think of his contribution and the way he controlled the short passes, he controlled the distribution in that game, it had a huge impact on the press from Newcastle.
Mhm.
And then if Garcia can do that, and you have one passer in Kubarsi or Eric Garcia comes in, and
Mhm.
they can take care of the passing element of it, where Araujo isn't the best, then this might be something that we see more often. More so because, I mean, in the last two games, Barca's high line has definitely dropped. It's not at the 40-meter mark. It's definitely
Yeah.
lower than that. And this game, it was kind of like a medium slow kind of a block that they were going zonal, and in that Araujo is much more fitted for the purpose. I'm not saying that he's going to play every game and he's going to start every game, but I think depending on the opposition, depending on how Flick reads the game, Araujo will see starts. There will be games where we'll see Araujo as a starter and Christensen also maybe coming in, and then there will be games where it is Garcia and Pau Kubarsi.
I buy that point actually, because that was the biggest thing about Araujo last season as well. It was like, okay, he's a great player, but for very specific situations, right? It's not going to be a player that's going to play every single game. That's going to be a player that like just wants to have and needs to have in the lineup every single week. It's just not going to happen at this point. But there comes a game, especially in Europe, and that's Araujo's biggest weapon, I think. He's very useful in Europe because he's good at controlling those moments. He's very good at controlling those high intensity games where you have both teams at maybe not at equal footing, but you have teams with similar firepower. And Newcastle, let's not get it wrong here, Deb, because Newcastle, they might not have the squad quality that we have, but they have enough firepower to cause us a lot of trouble. And they have caused us a lot of trouble. You mentioned the XG on the live session because the XG was neck and neck, right?
And in the first half, it was actually more for Newcastle than for Barcelona. You and I both remember, we talked about it, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
there were a couple of chances where Newcastle could have gone ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, Joan Garcia was very good. He anticipated the moves.
Yeah,
It didn't feel like there was much danger, but it could have been danger.
could have been.
If you go behind in those first 30 minutes with an
Mm-hmm.
opposition, a spectator base behind you, it is very, very difficult to come back. It is very difficult.
Absolutely.
So the fact that we neutralized the first 15 to 20 minutes of the press, that was so critical. Till 30
Mm-hmm.
minutes, you could feel that there was that energy that was shifting, and Newcastle were there in the game. But then slowly you could watch them, like Barca, take control. You could watch
Yeah.
them slowly take control of the midfield, slowly take control of the possession from the back, and then you could see the attacks, lining up, and Rashford was much more involved. Rafinha was much more involved. I think Frankie and Pedri played their role to perfection to a large extent.
Yeah.
And even though it wasn't like 50 attacks a minute, which was what we were used to last season, you never really felt that Barca were in a huge deal of trouble. They were in control. They were navigating the game. They were trying to
Mm-hmm.
pace it out completely.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt this was a Barca which controlled the game. They knew that they
Yeah.
had to control the game. They didn't go for the flashy. They didn't go for the superlative, but they knew what they had to do, and they did it with the game plan.
Yeah, it was a very mature performance overall, and I like what you said there. We never felt under high threat after those 15 minutes, and that's true. And but it also shows you that still Newcastle, despite not having much of the ball, despite not having that much threat, they still produced maybe 2 or 3 chances that could have changed the whole game, right? And that's what we talk about moments. In Europe, moments define everything. So you have moments in your own box, you have moments in your opposition's box. And the team that controls those moments better is usually a team that wins in Europe because Europe is very unforgiving. Europe sometimes won't give you many chances. Of course, if you make a mistake in Europe, it's usually one mistake and you're out, or maybe 2 mistakes and you're out. That's it. Now, we've become much better at controlling the moments in our own box, thanks to John Garcia, but also the added security of Araujo was critical there because he was winning every single duel there was to win, and that was paramount. And I do think that Flick made the right decision there because remember, I will hold my hands up, and I said before the game, I think Flick is not going to start out. I said he's probably going to go with a formula that's very familiar to him, that's proven to work. I thought Eric was going to be in there or Chris is going to be in there, but no, he went with Araujo, and he made the right choice. So I do think this shows progress now for just Flick, but for Barca as a whole, because this squad and the way that this squad handled the final 5 to 7 minutes when we
It was
conceded that
outstanding.
goal, that was outstanding.
There's a lot of time that has been spent on the
Yes.
internal
Yeah.
in the club, and you could watch, like, you can easily panic in the last
Oh,
8 minutes
absolutely.
of a game when
Mhm.
they have scored a goal, the momentum is on their side, and then you completely kill the momentum. You just pass the
Mhm.
ball around, and your entire team is on it. I think John Garcia, Pedri, Frankie, every single player knew what they had to do to keep the ball in possession and just circulate it out without taking any form of risk. And for
Mhm.
7 minutes, Newcastle didn't have a touch, which is it doesn't happen if you haven't practiced it, if you haven't talked about it, if there isn't a very
Mhm.
sustained game plan to go about that. So obviously the team is learning. So that's what made me feel very good that it wasn't flashy, it wasn't the 6 goal Barca, but it was a very mature Barca. And that is something that we'll
Mhm.
probably need if you want to win more trophies this season. I also wanted to your thoughts on John Garcia. I think
Mhm.
I don't know what you have noticed, but for me, from what I've been noticing, the first 2 or 3 games when he came in, obviously he's got a great. He can come out. He can command his areas. Very good with reflexes. Very good
Yeah.
aerially. All of that, no questions. Way better than anybody else that we've had in the longest time. But what I am finding now is that he's really put in a lot of effort in his short passing and his short distribution with his hands. And he's trying to make it easier for Barca to play it out from the back,
Mhm.
even in the face of high press. And I saw that mostly much more effective in the Valencia game and in the Newcastle game. But what are your thoughts on whether this is an observation you've been noticing, or are you seeing something different?
Yeah. I think it's not that big of a surprise because he is very good with his feet. It's just that at Espanyol, there was not really a need for him to showcase that as much. He can do it. Obviously, he can do it. His passing empathy is really good. So he knows how to pass the ball so that the receiver of the ball has no trouble or very little trouble controlling the ball that comes. That's what we call passing empathy. And João Garcia has that with long passing and with short passing as well. Now, I saw this very interesting quote. I'm not sure who it was from. And the quote basically said that the difference between the Real Madrid goalkeeper and the Barca goalkeeper is that the former has to save shots, but the latter has to play, right? And the Barca goalkeeper, that's very true, has to play. The Barca goalkeeper is always involved. And now João Garcia is learning, okay, I may be a good goalkeeper, but I need to learn how to be a good Barcelona goalkeeper because there's a very big difference between those two things. First one is a very general term. Okay, a good goalkeeper saves shots, but a Barca goalkeeper, a good Barca goalkeeper needs to do more than that. And to your point, Dev, yes, I think he's been progressing. He's been learning how the players around him move. But also, when you have someone like Pedri and Frankie in front of you, and even Pau Kubarsi, obviously, in front of you, it's easier because those players, they know what you will need and they know how they have to move and how they have to behave for the passes from the goalkeeper to be as easy as possible and as optimal as possible. Because passing ultimately is never a one way street. Right? It takes at least two people to complete that pass and make it so seamless and perfect the way Barca make it seem. So it's always going to be take Pedri and Frankie for example. There's this comp running around the timeline on Twitter where you have Pedri and Frankie interchanging passes, but it's always moving. One knows what the other is going to do, reads his motions, his intent perfectly, and then positions himself just the way he needs to be in the perfect situation to receive the ball after he gives the ball first. So it's take the ball, pass the ball at this very basest form. And I think João Garcia is slowly learning how to be involved in those intricacies of the Barca system. And to me, I think he has what it takes, right? To your point, he's been very, very good with that. And if he can do that and take care of his body and keep learning and keep an open mind, I think he has the next 10 years or so
Oh,
nailed
he's
as a great
no
goalkeeper.
questions on that. Like that's a position that's for him to lose now
Yeah.
with the kind of performances that he has been giving, and this is just a start. Now, I do fundamentally believe that he will improve a lot more on the sweeping part of the
Yeah.
game and on the distribution part of the game. The reflexes and the aerial domination, I think he was blessed with it, so I don't think he needs more work on it. He's really good at it on his own, and we've
Hmm.
seen that more than once this season. So that's going to save Barca maybe 10 goals a season, easy. And if he
Oh
can
yeah.
bring out that distribution aspect of his game even better than what it is right now, I think the way we play out from the back will become much better, and we can avoid that insane press that you get from La Liga teams who do it really really well. It's the defense that has been a concern for us for a while, and given the fact that we can't go back in the market and really get new players right now, more so with the new salary limits that have been given out, it's interesting how Flick manages it. So we saw one version with Araujo. I'm very excited to see what he does against Getafe. I
Oh yeah.
don't think it will be the same, and how he uses Christensen. Right? We haven't yet seen it to that level. But one more player I think we need just touch about before we move on to the next topic, and that was Kounde. I think he was phenomenal. And there was some talk like before in the last three games, Kounde hasn't really appeared as much. And there was
Mhm.
talk around, okay, what's happening? He was a 100% starter, but he hasn't played. Has he fallen out of favor or whatever? But
Yeah.
could there be some merit in that Flick has really thought about it and he saw that the team was really knackered by the end of last season? And the regular players who had played consistently were not up to the scratch. And that's why we
Mhm.
ultimately lost because of that. And could
Mhm.
it be that he's really trying to rotate and keep the players that he needs in the big games consistently fresh?
I think he's trying to learn on the mistakes of the last season. There were not many mistakes last season because it was a wonderful season overall. But if there was some things to take away from it, it would be obviously the Inter blunder, the way we controlled or not control the game in the final moments. We saw that addressed against Newcastle, and the other one was the fatigue and potential injuries and players being unavailable. So I think he is trying, to your point, he is trying to mitigate that. He's trying to avoid that this season. Now our squad depth is decent, but at the same time, there are some positions that will feel a drastic drop in quality when we rotate. And then in Kounde's case, I think we are blessed, so to speak, because Eric Garcia has proven to be a very, very good replacement for Kounde. He's not someone who's going to displace Kounde because we saw that Kounde performance is something I'm not sure Eric would replicate easily, at least not easily. But then again, if we do have to rotate Kounde, Eric is there. And to Flick, that means the world. And yes, I think there might be some of that in his decision not to start Kounde in every single game this season already. And I think he will continue where he has the opportunity, especially with when the Champions League games coming up. I think he will try and use the squad depth as much as possible, which is what you're supposed to be doing, right? You're supposed to be doing that because no one can play this modern schedule of football without any repercussions. We know that much. We know this is the case, and we know that's true for Barca and many other teams. But maybe especially for Barca because sometimes it feels that we're not really built for this because it's just too much. Then again, who is built for this? Who is built for this madness that is football nowadays? But yeah, to your point, I think it was planned, well planned in advance, and it was with the aim to have the best and fittest squad available for this Newcastle game, which brings us nicely to what happened with the PSG game, for example. Are we going to see the same thing, same rotations in advance?
Well, we have to come to that. Like we have Getafe, and then we have immediately got PSG coming up. So
So,
I'm very interested to see what lineup he uses against Getafe, given all the
mhm,
injuries
mhm,
that we have. And
yeah,
I'm curious to see the reintroduction of Mark Vanal back into the team. Obviously, he played for a very little bit, in that earlier league game.
yeah, yeah,
I think we're going to see more of him slowly. I do think there is no question that Pedri and Frankie are the best midfield pair that we have right now. But we'll talk about Getafe. But before we do that, let's talk about one thing that really surprised a lot of people is the reception on social media, especially from British
oh yeah,
media and also fans of Newcastle. There was a lot of nicety. Let's just start with that. And that is not something that you can talk about social media these days. There's more of vitriol and toxicity that you get to see. But there was this one particular game, and I think there was unanimous across the media, the pundits, the fans that hey they saw something nice,
yeah,
they appreciated what they saw, and then there was overall happiness that hey, no harm, that we had good entertainment, right? And it wasn't about okay the Brook Club or cheating
mm,
or this and that, which is what 90% of the conversation is. It wasn't about referees, it wasn't about wrong calls, it was just about good football, how the two teams try to come together and have a good game, and that people had good entertainment in the end.
absolutely. And it was really nice to see. And I think many of these fans, the English fans or fans who are not Barca fans, they don't watch Barca as much. And to see Pedri or Frankie or even the team as a whole perform at this level and play the way we play, it was a big shock to them. It was a surprise to them. I'm not saying that they've never seen us or anyone else. They have the Man Cities and Arsenals and Chelsea's who do try and play in a similar kind of way
Yeah.
to Barcelona sometimes, but no one really replicates the things that we do to perfection. And I think to them it was something new. Even the players came out saying after the game, "Okay, this is next level, right? We were not used to this." They just kept the ball. They frustrated us to no end. They made us run a lot. We were knackered, and then they finished us off. And that's the recipe for Barca always. Even in the face of the high press, of the intensity, of the physicality that Premier League brings, our weapons are always going to be the same. And I love that. And Flick stood by his guns a lot. We
Yeah.
saw
Yeah.
Barca try and build up from the back, try and play around the press. Yes, sometimes there was the odd long ball towards Rafinha or Lewandowski, but that's normal, right? But then we still, even if we had Gerard Martin, who really struggled in that aspect because he was the one that was getting pressed constantly, and he was the one that was getting cornered constantly in the build-up. But we still kept trying because we believed, okay, this is the proper way that we have to combat this. Not with muscle against muscle. No, it was our own strengths and our own powers and abilities that we know we're confident in, and we use those against Newcastle. I think that's part of the reason why their fans were also impressed, because they saw something that they saw our ideals, and they saw how different sometimes they are, but also how strong they are. And to me, as you said, the reception has been beautiful. Not just about Pedri and our players, just the team and the philosophy as a whole. It warms my heart that there's actually genuine interactions between rivals, because we are rivals in Europe, we all rivals. But there was actually, as I say, cities said from both sides, and it's nice to see for change.
Yeah, it was nice to see. Like, I think, as you said, the players' perception and the media calling out Barcelona's game, and a lot of media actually called out that they would expect and love to see Barcelona go all the way. And I think this
Mhm.
is something that the club lost in the last 10 years. This sense of pride, the sense of just pure amazement or wonder from other people or fans who
Yeah.
watch us. This had completely disappeared. And you got to give credit to, we always criticize the board, we always criticize everything about the club, but you got to give it credit that they are slowly bringing it back with the decisions that they have made, with the people that they have brought along. And it hasn't been easy. And I think we're still not out of the woods. And there are many other challenges. And like right now, I think there is another hearing on the infamous Negreira case going on, and that'll continue. But so much has been repaired from that perspective, from a
Mhm.
perception perspective, from just brand value and how people perceive us. So yeah, that'll be
Yeah.
interesting to see. And it was refreshing, because generally with Barca, I mean, it would be that you can't go through social media. It's just toxic. It's just simply toxic, right? So this wasn't the case, and that was fun. Would be interesting to see what happens in against PSG. That's a game coming up, and then we have Getafe coming up. So let's talk about those. Bordalas, never very easy, and
Mhm.
he'll be back, and we'll be playing at the Estadi, which is a very small stadium, but we have been winning there pretty well. So hopefully the winning curve continues. What are you expecting, Dom?
Oh, I'm expecting the usual razzle dazzle that comes with Bordelas and Getafe. The very ironic thing is that whenever he speaks of Barcelona, whenever he speaks of
He
Johan
speaks about Johan
Cruyff,
Cruyff.
yeah, I know, yeah, Johan Cruyff, he's my role model. He's the one I look up to. And I'm like, really? He's the one you look up to? I mean, how's that? How's that even possible? But yeah, I mean, he knows what his team is capable of. He knows what his team's strengths are, and this, in that sense, he is very Cruyffian. He's actually similar to Flick. Flick saw this team and he thought, okay, I have a team that is really good at things X, Y, and Z. So I'm going to make sure that my system, my tactics, put those things in the spotlight. And that's why this Barca team is so good, because the system caters to the team's strengths, right? And the same way we can talk about Bordelas, because he has a group of people who are all on the same page, who all believe in the way they play, and maybe the way they play is not really the nicest to everyone. Maybe it's not always the most eye-catching, but if it works and if it fits their player profiles, their ideology, their fans' point of view, whatever it is, you can't blame them for doing it, right? So we know what to expect. And now to your previous point of, okay, team selection, there's a couple of things here. Obviously, a different game, a drastically different game to the one we saw against Newcastle. Yes, we'll see counterattacks the way Newcastle did, but we also see a much more compact low block, because Newcastle, what they did, they set up 4-5-1, which is also, to be fair to them, it is a system that tries to suffocate all the space in the middle. That's what you do against Barca. You suffocate the space in the middle. But then Barca managed to pull players out to open spaces between the lines. That's how they access Furman, although not very successfully all the time, but that's how they access players between the lines, right? The number eights, the floating wingers, they would be between the lines. When you pull out the midfielder out of that shape, you have some space to access in that middle. Now, we will have to do the same thing against Getafe, And it might be difficult because at the moment, without Lamine, our front line is very, it still has potency, it has quality, but it doesn't have that much diversity in player profiles. Because when you look at Rashford, Rafinha, Lewandowski, none of those players are lock pickers, right? They're not people who will unlock a deep, compact, low block through their trickery, like Lamine, for example. They're not those kind of players. So we'll have to figure out how to go about it with the players that we have available. And it will also impact Flick's selection because does Araujo start this game? Because he's earned a start, maybe, but is he the right profile? Maybe less so in this situation when you maybe need more impetus from the back, more of a passing game from the back to unlock and access some of those areas. There'll be very few spaces, but when the opportunity is there, you will need someone who is reliable in finding those spaces.
I agree with you. I think it's back to Eric Garcia and Kubarsi. Getafe will do Getafe things, and credit to them. Yes, there's a lot to dislike about the way they play, and then we have covered that. What I do like about Bordalas is that he plays with what he has got. Well, Getafe is at 9 points. They have won the same amount of games as Barca. They've lost one. We have drawn one. That's the only difference. There are 9 points. If you see their budget compared to budgets of Real Madrid and Atletico Madrid and Barcelona, it's a drop in the ocean, right? And yet, Getafe are never easy to play. Not for us, not for Madrid, not for Atletico. And you gotta give credit to that man for that. I mean, you may disagree with him in his way of playing or his philosophy of playing or what have you, but I mean, if you were in his shoes with, you don't have budgets, you don't have good players to buy, you can't, and then you have these teams just rolling up and you got to compete with them. What do you do? So he does what he needs to do for his club, right? And I do give credit there to Bordalas. Doesn't make for good watching, but lately, I think last couple of seasons, I've seen him experiment as well. Like there wasn't that insane, 10-man block. He did try to play on the counter in a couple of games on situations. So it'll be interesting to see how he evolves. But it's not going to be easy. Getafe is never easy. So, and to your point, like we will need those access areas from the back to unlock. They will definitely try to do the long ball, second ball routine that we have seen them do before. So again, just managing that. And we won't have Lamine. We know that. Rafinha is still blowing hot and cold this season. Rashford, yes, he did score a couple of goals, so credit where it's due. But before that, he did still look wavy and patchy. Lewandowski had a good run with Valencia, but Never is 37. You can't expect him to, just bail you out in every game anymore. So that's not going to happen. So yeah, there are risks out there. And any game right now where we lose points or we drop points or we, suffer a defeat, that's going to just add to the pressure. But I still will back Barca to win, maybe a 2-1 or something like that.
A win is what we expect, and obviously what we want. And we'll be back with a live session after Getafe as well, guys, in case you would be interested to join us. Just find us on X and you will see the live stream there, or just head to our YouTube channel, and that's where you'll find the live stream as well. But yes, a win would be great, obviously. Now, it will be an easy win, probably not. I think Getafe will cause us problems in their own way. Maybe not similar to Newcastle, because Newcastle had different strengths and different style of play, but then Getafe is what Getafe is, and we know what to expect. But it's like with Messi, right? You know what he's gonna do, but you can't stop it. And sometimes Getafe are very similar in the way that they function, because you know that they're gonna go with their low block. You know that they will try and out muscle you in certain areas, and just have to prepare for it somehow. And I'm really now, in the light of this progress that we've been making and the maturity of the team, I would love to see progress on the other end as well. So we see how we handle the pressure situation, how we handle the situation where we have to be the ones to unlock a team that's just stubborn and doesn't give you an inch. Now, how do Barca tackle that? Because they've, as we all know, and we've talked about this a lot, because Barca and low blocks, yes, it's common to see because many teams will concede possession, they will concede territory, but then they know, okay, maybe this Barca won't have the lock pickers to actually unlock this low block. And that's where we need to see some progress as well. That's how do we tackle that, especially without Lamine Yamal? Yes, we have the technical players like Olmo and Pedri and Frenkie de Jong, obviously, but in the front line, there will be some sparks missing.
Even in Newcastle, we won it because of two really amazing
Mhm.
goals from Rashford. We didn't really expect. But beyond that, did Barca really create that many chances? Probably no. Yes, there were chances. I'm not denying that, but that creativity was for sure missing.
Hmm.
We got lucky, and we had those two amazing goals out of nowhere from Rashford. And if you get goals like that, you win games, obviously. But that creativity that you talked about, that ability to pick through a 9 block defense,
Mm.
uh, against a resolute Getafe or a resolute, Osasuna or what have you, it's not going to be easy. It's going to be hard. Flick has to solve for that. You're right. In the absence of Lamine, because he's not going to come back, I think, for the next 2 or 3 games. And
Yeah.
even if he did, I think our this insane dependency that we are starting to develop on Lamine for everything, I think that's nice. I mean, we
Yeah.
suffered with that with Messi for like 15 years probably, and the team is in a better condition if they can find a situation or a solution where they don't have to depend on that. Olmo was going to be that answer, but unfortunately, Olmo hasn't really sparkled till now this season, and sooner or later we'll have some conversations about him and what's going wrong there. It is going to be difficult against Hedafe to pick up that distinct low block that Bordelas will go with, and
Yeah.
would love to see what Lord Flick does, because with the technicians that we have, we might not be that successful. You're not very fast on the counter, or we don't really get that opportunity to make that happen. Let's now try to bring it all in with the last topic, which is basically Barca's
Wage bill.
wage bill. Yeah, wage bill. It's a topic which needs economists and and finance experts,
Hmm.
and none of us are that. But we have tried to curate as much as we have been able to through secondhand research, and there's a lot on the blog about that and so on. While we will not try to solve for all the questions here, the fact of the matter is that in the window we were around 460 million euros. Now,
Hmm.
with like that has been brought down to about 350 or something like that. And what La Liga said was it was mostly because of the auditors not accepting the 100 million in the seats. And that's
Right.
the number that they have taken away. Now, there's a lot of maths in it. We can't really solve it sitting here and talking with each other. But let's talk about what that means. It does mean that if it remains like this, it is going to be virtually impossible to get anybody in the window. Just forget
Hmm.
it. It's not happening. Let's assume we do get back into Camp Nou, which we don't know when that will happen because the dates keep slipping. But it looks to be ready enough for to start with 27,000 or 30,000 people or whatever they're talking about, and then they ratify those VIP seats because they are ready. They are obviously visible. Then there is a chance that this can be revised back to normal or to that 460, 500 range in the window.
Yeah.
But without that, I think this is pretty much the squad we have for the rest of the season. Now, how this gets impacted by the end of next season or the next budget, that will depend on a lot of things, because the way La Liga does this is because they look into not just your wage bill, they also look at player amortizations, they also look at unpaid salary, they also look at payments that you owe other clubs because you bought players from them like 3 years
Hmm.
ago. Like, we're still paying for Rafinha. We're still paying for a lot of players like that. So they take into consideration all of those parameters. Then they take into consideration the debt that you have. And Barca has a debt because they are paying back the loan that they have taken for the stadium. So then you take into account all of those numbers, and then you align that with, okay, how much revenue is the club making? And then they do their own calculation. And there is a specific calculation. There is a very specific calculation that they put in. And those of you who want to know that can go into La Liga's website and you can check it out. But it looks like if this continues for the next 2 seasons or two transfer windows, it's going to be like this, Tom,
Hmm.
right? It will be
Hmm.
mostly this team with homegrown players, and that's okay. But with Lewandowski, you will need a striker sooner or later. And that is
Yeah.
going to cost you in this market upward of 100 mil. You're not going to get
Mm.
anything below that. So what's your take on this whole thing?
I think for the winter, that's what I would expect, and I would be very surprised if we saw any arrivals in the winter transfer window. It's potentially maybe if we can unload someone that we've not been able to unload this summer, maybe yeah exits. But then again, would Flick be open to weakening the squad, even if it's just pure bodies? If you have fewer bodies for a big season like ours, I don't know if that's something that he wants to do. So maybe to your point, maybe we see no activity at all in the winter transfer window. Now, for the summer, I think there will have to be movements, and I think by that point, they will want the stadium to be finished. They want to sort as much of the wage bill as possible. Now, this 100 mil decrease is a good thing. It's progress, but then to your point, it's not enough to make a big dent in the whole depth situation. Yes, there's something will have to give. Something will have to change. Something will have to be different by next summer because Lewandowski, yes, potentially that's what we have to look for. That's the biggest one. Now, obviously, Barca may still look to options that are more affordable, but then who's affordable and yet at the level required to replace someone like Lewandowski? We don't have that many high-profile strikers that are left on the market that are available to Barca because many of them have moved clubs this summer. We've analyzed how many strikers they have on the channel. I think we analyzed Gyökeres, Samuel Morodion, who else? Benjamin Šeško. And three of those fours I've just mentioned
Are
have
gone.
moved clubs. Gone. So they are off the table. If a situation happens where Barca don't have the money and don't have any superstar signings to go for anyway, we might see a developmental signing more or less, but then a developmental signing cannot really replace Lewandowski outright. And if Lewandowski does indeed leave in the summer, which there have been hints of that, and given his age and his career so far, is a possibility. Now, if you're stuck with, I say stuck with, I mean, all disrespect, but if you're stuck with Ferran Torres and a developmental striker, that does not bode down well. Now, it might bring or force Flick into a situation where he has to experiment with Dani Olmo's false nine, where he has to experiment with Marcus Rashford as number 9 as well, or maybe do some sort of different formations without a proper out and out striker. It can work. It can work. It can be an option. But I think at this point, Flick would rather have a focal point number 9 in the form of Lewandowski and someone who can replicate that than go and experiment with things like a strikerless system, which can work again, but it's not as easy and it requires you to have proper and fitting profiles, at least some funds with some margins to sign someone. But then even if they do, the problem will persist of is there anyone to sign? So that's the big thing that here in this conversation.
Yeah. So that's about it, guys. I think that's enough for this episode. We will be back with the coverage after the Getafe game, and then we'll be back obviously after the Paris Saint-Germain game.
We have Oviedo and Real Sociedad. Yeah, and then Real Sociedad and then PSG. So we'll
it'll be interesting to see where we play those games because right now Barca is playing across 3 stadiums. What we heard is that we are preparing for Montjuic, and then we are also playing at the Estadi, and then there is a chance that we can also play the Sociedad game in the Camp Nou. Looks difficult, to be honest with you, but we'll get to see more about that when it happens. But until then, thank you guys for joining in. We will be obviously coming out with this. You can follow this podcast and the Barca Weekly that we are going to come up with. And just follow along, support, share, like, subscribe. Tell us which player you want us to cover. And Dom's been researching on a few profiles, so it would be good to have your point of view on that. And then we can go from there. Until then, take care, stay safe, and Visca Barca.
Visca Barca.